Hi there from Chicago. This Big Ten Today, fueled by Gatorade. Thrilled to have you with us for the next hour. Mike Hall alongside Jake Butt. The last time I saw you was yesterday on National Signing Day. Actually, now that I think about it, it really wasn't that long ago.
No, but before that, I see we've sprinkled in some of the pregame shows throughout the season, but now I get you two times in 24 hours. I'm elated, Mike.
It's
great to be with
miracle.
you. It is.
Let's get to our big story of the day. It is focusing on National Signing Day. I know it might not be the most exciting day of the year, but it is such an important glimpse into the future of your favorite Big Ten team. Here are the rankings as we stand now. Now, remember, first off, this extends for 3 days, so these could move a little bit here and there. Also, there's a second signing day in February, so there will be some adjustment. But for the vast majority, this is basically what it's going to look like, and it's pretty good for just about all these Big Ten teams. You see half of the league on the left is all in the top 30, including Oregon, Ohio State, and Michigan having top 10 classes overall. There were individual players that stood out. There were trends and themes that stood out. There were classes that were better than normal. There were classes that were nationally elite. If you were to pick in general a storyline or a thing that stood out the most from yesterday, what would it be?
I'm just so impressed by Oregon, and I have been even. I just go back to Big Ten Media Days over the summer where Dan Lanning gets up and talks, and those are long days, and there's 18 teams, and Dan Lanning stands up at the podium, and you see heads turning around and people whispering and saying, that guy's impressive. Like, he could run for president and he'd probably get elected. He's just that type of leader. And what I look at now, since he got hired, Oregon has been on a mission. I got a quote for you here, Mike. If a man knows not which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Why did I use that quote? They know what port they're sailing to.
Right.
There is absolute alignment from Phil Knight all the way down through their athletic department, obviously Dan Lanning, the entire staff. We got to call their game against Maryland, and our entire crew was just blown away by the preparation. Recruiting is then the lifeblood of your organization, and once again, sign a big class. Even something like flipping a key player in Naeem Alford from Ohio State, going down into the South and getting him out of Alabama. These are big-time wins for Dan Lanning, and yet they're quiet. We don't talk that much about Oregon considering how good they've been this year. It's just, you know, I think about if you're a new kid in high school or whatever, like you might be a little shy walking in on the first day, you're a little timid. Oregon is the new team here in the conference, and Dan Lanning has kicked down the door and done it his way.
You know what's funny about you saying that? We've both followed college football our whole lives, so I was well aware of Dan Lanning, well aware of Oregon, etc. This summer, I went down and met with him in Eugene. It was a 5-minute interview. If you count before and after putting the microphones on and off, I was with him 15, 20 minutes. And when he walked away, I was like, this guy's the next superstar in college football coaching. Yeah. Like, I had the same reaction you had at Media Day. I was like, I get it. He is charming. He is thoughtful. He's mature. He's fun. He's like driven. He's a family man. Like, I was blown away. I'm not kidding. I think he's the next superstar coach in this sport.
I'm completely with you, and it comes at a perfect time because the faces of college football, the legends like Nick Saban was the face of college football. Jim Harbaugh, coming off the past 3 years and winning a national title, was becoming the face of college football. Now there's a vacancy there.
There's an opening,
Maybe
right?
Kirby Smart. They certainly haven't been perfect. Could it be Ryan Day? Obviously, losing this past weekend hurts him. And here's Dan Lanning, undefeated regular season. They're the favorites in the Big Ten title game. He's the face of college football. It's unbelievably impressive to watch what he's got going on.
And it's funny you saying it does feel a little quiet. I think that quiet might go away. I mean, this Saturday, eyes will be on him in Indianapolis. You win that game, they'll have the #1 overall seed in the playoff. They'll be the favorite to win multiple games. There will be eyeballs on him and on that program.
Yeah, and you know, things have changed in college football. Like, you know, it's minimum, he cut his teeth as a defensive coordinator, so you need to know X's and O's, right? Obviously, a great football mind, but then you become a head coach and you have to be a CEO. You have to inspire and attract talent. He filled out a phenomenal staff. You also have to be able to connect with multiple different generations. This younger generation, the fact that he's young benefits him. He's got this entire team going in the same direction. But it doesn't stop there then. Actually, now you have to be a CEO in the sense you have to be a great fundraiser. It helps having Phil Knight out there, right? But you have to be active in the community. There's so many roles now that go beyond just football to be a great head coach. And what you're just saying there too, Dan Lanning checks every single box. He's a well-rounded guy.
He brings in the best class in the Big Ten. The best player coming to the Big Ten on National Signing Day was actually the best player in the country. Bryce Underwood, a quarterback from the state of Michigan who had been committed elsewhere to LSU, but he flipped over to Michigan just a handful of days ago. Alongside Rashawn Gary, he's the second Michigan Wolverine to be the #1 overall ranked player, regardless of position, in the internet era at least, to go to Ann Arbor. I know you've watched film on him. I know you've talked with Sharon Moore about this. I know you're connected to Ann Arbor and you feel the excitement around what this guy is. But what I think first and foremost is they just beat their rival with a walk-on quarterback.
I know.
What could they do with the #1 most talented player in the country in high school?
Well, look at J.J. McCarthy, right? Their highest-rated quarterback recruit.
Very good recruit.
And look what you do when you have that level of talent. We know Michigan's identity is going to want to run the ball and play defense. That's who they've been in the past. That's who they will be going forward. But when you get a talented quarterback like J.J. McCarthy, he starts to open up other levels. And really, because of that, you then beat your rival 3 straight years, win the Big Ten title 3 straight years, 3 straight playoff appearances, and a national title. Now, coming off a frustrating season, so you come off the high of the national title to a frustrating, puzzling season. You're coming off a bye week and you play Northwestern, and you look great. All of a sudden, Bryce Underwood commits, and the excitement starts to build a little bit. Bang, you have the upset of the century against Ohio State, and it's night and day the direction and feeling of this program right now compared to where we were a month ago.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
I mean, he is a real talent, too. I mean, he can run. He's got a cannon for an arm. He's accurate. There's a lot of excitement about Underwood in particular heading to Michigan, although he was not the only top quarterback recruit. Maryland got a very good recruit. Wisconsin got a very good quarterback recruit. Ohio State brought in a very good quarterback recruit. And if people might have forgotten, last year Ohio State had 2 quarterbacks signed to their class that were top 50 overall players. Now, we didn't hear from them this past year because things weren't pretty well, at least until the Michigan game with Will Howard. But it is going to be a stacked QB room if they keep all those guys for next year.
Yeah, and it's the more things change, the more they stay the same. Like Ohio State just continues to get high-level talent. Like I think about to when I was a kid, my dad would always say, everyone's parents would say, money doesn't grow on trees. Like try to save it up. And you might say that to Ohio State, like, listen, these high-level recruits don't grow on trees. But yes, they do for Ohio State. They just continue to attract and acquire great talent. But you have to peel back the layers because it's a good chance to talk about what happened last weekend. They didn't lose because of a lack of talent. I've been saying this now for a few years. They haven't fallen short because of a lack of talent. So what is it? I look at loyalty to the program where your life depends. Jim Harbaugh said, we will beat Ohio State or die trying. Okay, so you need recruits that aren't just talented, but that are aligned, like we're talking about with Dan Lanning, to the mission of the Ohio State Buckeyes. You talk about your quarterback, St. Clair, been committed for over a year. That's not common in today's landscape. You talk about Devin Sanchez, 5-star. He's been committed for a really long time as well. So they're aligned with the program. So you have the talent, you're starting to fill out the needs, but you're bringing in guys that from the outside looking in are loyal to the Buckeyes and are committed to the mission and vision of that program's future.
And we always talk about on signing day that, listen, some of these names you're not going to hear for 3 years, right? Some of these guys we talk about on signing day might redshirt the first year and barely play the second year, and then it's that third year they start getting time. But there are the Jeremiah Smiths. He was the #1 recruit in the country last year. He's the Big Ten wide receiver of the year this year. There's Coy Parrish, who is the top recruit from Minnesota, led the Big Ten in interceptions this year. Nick Marsh was the superstar recruit for Michigan State. He was their top wide receiver. There's a lot of guys that will make an instant impact as true freshmen.
Yeah, I want to talk about Quincy Porter real quick because I have to. My uncle coaches him. He's the wide receiver coach at Bergen Catholic, so he literally coaches Quincy Porter, and he's been telling me for years. First off, he knew Jeremiah Smith very well, and he called that one. Everyone called it. This guy's a freak amongst freaks. But he's been saying Quincy Porter has that freakiness to his game as well. Same build. There's a number of different ways you can play wide receiver. He's got a similar build to a Jeremiah Smith, a Marvin Harrison Jr., 6'3", like 210 pounds, big body, plays strong. But what I love about him is my uncle says this guy's the hardest worker on the team. My uncle has to stay an hour after practice most days because Quincy wants to get extra reps. He wants to get additional catches, run additional routes, a leader, beloved in the locker room. And then little things that, when I'm looking at a defensive guy, I want to turn on their special teams tape in high school because it tells me how much you care about football. It tells me how much you care about your team. Selflessness, that a top recruit playing special teams is a good indicator. Well, for Quincy Porter, he is who he is because of his ability to catch the ball. Watch him block. He is a dominant blocker. One of the big reasons Ohio State has been able to elevate their running game this year is because of their emphasis on blocking. That's a sign of culture. Quincy Porter he doesn't need to block that does not affect his rating at all. But it tells me that he's got the ingredients to be a really special player.
And we talk about Ohio State and Oregon and Michigan because they all have top 10 classes and they deserve extra attention. But not everybody can be a top 10 class. That doesn't mean you're not bringing in talent, right? Yeah. Penn State sometimes brings in a top 10 class, almost always brings in a top 15 class, always brings in a top 20 class. They once again had a good group this year. Maryland had a good class. Wisconsin, Nebraska, Washington all had really good classes. They're not top 10 classes, but they're really good, especially for their programs. Anything in particular from that next group of really good classes that stands out to you?
Yeah, well, real quick, what I like about Penn State is, here's recruiting. That's just the beginning. The development is the next key. Penn State develops really well. I feel like every year at the Combine, we're seeing Penn State wide receivers or DBs running a 4.3. The big skill guys, linebackers, tight ends running 4.5, 4.6. They develop really well. I'm looking at Iowa, and I'm not looking – another good recruiting class. I think they're 9th in the Big Ten from 247. They're a team that develops really well. Kirk Ferentz and his staff have gotten their players to play above their recruit ranking. But I look at the opportunity because Miller Moss is in the transfer portal right now, which means we're speculating on where he might go. Michigan was speculated. I don't know how that works out with Bryce Underwood. Iowa is a team that's speculated to get a guy, Miller Moss. And I think I think he's really talented. I think he'd be the most talented quarterback to go to Iowa as far as I can remember, probably even since I was playing there at Michigan. But with Tim Lester coming in, the offense definitely took strides this year. That cannot be denied.
Almost doubled the points per game.
Yes. Of course, they got tight ends, and they have another handful of great tight ends in their class. They got some high-ranked recruits. What would it mean for Kirk Ferentz if they get a top 6 or 7 quarterback in the conference? And I think Miller Moss could be that in this system. That's the exciting part right here. Now, they have to overcome their outside perception and their history. Not a lot of quarterbacks say, man, I'm going to go realize my full potential playing at Iowa. It's just not the nature. They want to run the ball and play defense. But a guy like Miller Moss, it's the exact opposite of what he was asked to do at USC. Lincoln Riley did not run the ball. They'd have him throw 50 times a game, and he was getting hit as much as anyone. Right. That's not going to be the case at Iowa. He's going to be able to run the ball first and then get into play action, almost similar to a San Francisco 49ers system in the NFL. So I think that's a perfect fit. Coming off a great recruiting class, go get your quarterback.
He'd keep his jersey clean.
Yes.
They got some big dudes at Iowa who protect their quarterback,
yep,
for sure. Last thing on signing day before we go, it is an important day, but it is not everything. Last year, Indiana had the 59th ranked class in the country. The year before that, they had the 67th ranked class. But they're 11-1, and a couple days from finding out they're going to be playing in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
So the transfers you bring in and the guys who may not be super high recruits but that develop under you are just as, if not more important in modern-day college football.
100%. And I believe if you're in either extreme, you're done for. You have to have a blend of both. And recruiting will still be the lifeblood of every organization. When we talk to coaches about this, they say they want the foundation to still be to recruit high school players and to develop them. And then you supplement positions of need through the transfer portal. So that's the key. You make a great point right here, and it's a big reason why college coaches, it's one of the hardest jobs in sports right now. Not only do you have to recruit high school players, you have to recruit the transfer portal. That means you have to recruit your own players as well. So the coaches that have that youthful energy and spark to be able to handle it all, they'll be served well.
Well, we've touched briefly on the fact that the Big Ten title game is this Saturday. It'll be between Oregon and Penn State. We got
0.8 seconds left here in Iowa City. Iowa down by 2 with the ball. For the win. Oh! Josh Dix just nailed it from Caitlin Clark range here in Carver Hawkeye. Unbelievable game to start the Big Ten Conference season with a game winner. 0.9 seconds, Josh Dix coming up huge.
Quite a way to start off conference play. Josh Dix is our big interview on today's show. Thanks for joining us, Josh. Let's start with this. Down to less than a second left, timeout called. What is said in that huddle?
Just get a shot up, with less than a second. We knew we couldn't take a dribble or anything, so we tried to get a tip play to the rim, and I told Brock if it wasn't open, I'd be at the top and try and make a shot.
So as he inbounds, it takes a second or two. What's going through your head?
Just try and get open. They put a 7-footer on the ball, so it made it difficult for him to throw the ball in, but, I tried to get open at the top, and he found me.
So the ball goes in as you're backpedaling. What's the first thought in your head?
Just shoot it. Even if I'm fading, I just had to shoot it, so.
Your teammates attacked you and the fans attacked you and you're swarmed by people. What's that feeling like?
Oh, it was unbelievable. It's something that you really just dream as of a kid, making a buzzer beater shot like that. So it was crazy, and I'm glad that my team and fans got to celebrate too.
Well, you mentioned that's the thing. That's what we love about sports. We love about hoops. Everybody does that in their backyard, in their driveway. They're shooting that shot, counting down 3, 2, 1. How did it compare to what you'd thought it would be like your whole life?
It might have been better, in the backyard, if you miss the first one somehow, like 2 seconds, magically you get added back and you shoot it again. But that last night or 2 nights ago, I couldn't do that. So, I had to make the first one.
Have you had any of those, like absolute buzzer beaters before, whether it was in high school or wherever?
I've not. Yeah, high school, I never hit a buzzer beater, or in college, I never hit a buzzer beater before that. So it was crazy.
What was the first thing Fran McCaffrey said to you afterwards?
I met him by the TV station, and all he said was, "I love you." That's it. So I just said, "I love you too, Coach," and yeah, it was a good moment.
I love you. Just do that every time we need a hero moment.
Yeah.
That's perfect. This continues a trend for you. Going back to last year, you really turned it on late in the season. February and March, you started scoring a ton. Why was that happening then? Why did your offense really spark at the end of last year?
I feel like the coaches and my teammates just put a lot of trust and confidence in me, even in the beginning of the season, and I really just had to kind of take that next step myself, and, I kind of did that, and, my teammates, we play really unselfish, and they were just finding me at the right times.
Going back even further in your career, your high school senior year, I believe it was, you broke your leg, and that's a tough thing to come back from. Even when you're recovered, your freshman year in college, it wasn't like you were 100%. When did you feel like you were actually fully back and healthy?
Probably the off-season going into my sophomore season. My freshman off-season, it was kind of difficult. I wasn't able to go live or anything for a while, and my first time going live was really just start of practice in September. So it was difficult, but that off-season last year really helped me.
What was the hardest part for you about that recovery process?
Just not being able to play or do anything. Coming to campus and, not being able to go live, just seeing everyone else, playing and stuff, that was probably the hardest part.
What's the part about transitioning from high school ball to college ball that people might not realize is tricky?
Definitely the physicality and speed of the game. We like to play really fast up and down the court, so just getting used to that, being conditioned well enough to do that. And then the physicality, you're going against way bigger people, and it's tough to blow by up people at this level.
Give me an idea of the kind of conditioning that you have to do in a Fran McCaffrey program.
It's a lot. Our practices are up and down almost every day. We start with like transition drills and layups and stuff like that just to get going, and the rest of practice is just up and down, playing against each other.
Your three-point shooting obviously is such a big part of your game. What has your head coach said to you about the quote-unquote green light you would have from deep?
Yeah, he puts confidence in all of us, me, Peyton, Price, everyone on the team, they feel confident, if you have a good look just to knock it down, and that's one of the reasons it's great to play for him, he just wants you to be out there and be free.
You, Peyton, Price, three-point shooting contests. Who's getting first, second, third?
I don't know. They're both really good. they're both probably better shooters than I am. I'd probably go myself third, but I don't know. Peyton says he used to beat him all the time in the backyard and stuff, so I'll go Peyton 1, Price 2.
What about, the half-court shot has become a staple of the end of shoot-arounds before a game. Who on your team's hitting the most of those this year?
The coaches do it at the end of shoot-arounds, so Gaten's made the one that we've done so far, which, I mean, is kind of cheating. He's a player, so. But, yeah, it's good.
Give me one of your teammates that has impressed you this season.
I would definitely say Brock Harding. Last year he didn't play as much, but this year, he's got the minutes. He's starting point guard, and, he really knows how to play. He's super unselfish. He'll find you at any time, any moment on the court, and, it's really easy playing with him.
Yeah, what feels different with him this year from last year? Because you're right, statistically especially, he's way up this season.
Yeah, I would just say his confidence, he believes in himself all the time, but, just getting more minutes is really giving him the confidence to, he has the keys to our offense, and, he finds everyone. Him and Owen, they had that connection from high school, and, he's just really unselfish.
The game you had the buzzer beater on was, of course, a conference game. How different does it feel when you're playing against Big Ten competition?
Oh, it definitely feels different, because every game is important. My first 2 years, we started 0-3 in the Big Ten and been digging ourselves out of a hole. But this year, it felt good to start 1-0, so we can just keep building on that success.
Josh, the next time you guys have a game and there's like a couple seconds left and you're in a huddle and it's a one-possession contest, I assume you're going, guys, we know who we're getting the ball.
Yeah, whatever Fran draws up, we're going to run. So, hopefully we're not in that position again, down 2 with 0.8 left. But, we don't know.
No. That's not the right answer. The right answer is, listen here, coach. I already hit a game winner. You're feeding me.
Yeah. I'll say that for sure, but whatever he draws up.
You can say it. That doesn't mean he'll do it. Josh, congratulations on the shot, man. Thanks for giving us some of your time.
Yeah, thank you.
The legendary newspaper, the Chicago Tribune, has handed out their Silver Football Award for 100 years. It started 11 years before the Heisman was handed out. The very first one went to football icon Harold Red Grange back in 1924. As for this year, the winner will be announced in 1 week, next Thursday. But we're happy to announce today they are down to 3 semi-finalists for what is the Big Ten Player of the Year honor. One of them is Caleb Johnson, the Iowa running back that led the league with 128 rushing yards a game. Also ran for 21 scores on the ground, which is an Iowa record. Another one of them is actually on the defensive side of things, Penn State D lineman Abdul Carter, who just won the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year honor from the coaches and media. He tallied up 10 sacks this year and led the conference with almost 20 tackles for loss. And the other finalist is Oregon QB Dylan Gabriel, who is tops in the league in completion percentage, and his season isn't even done yet. Big Ten title game this Saturday against Penn State. Here, Gabriel's teammate on him.
Gabriel keeps plenty of space, and he's still going. Gabriel, make a move. He's gone. 27 yards. Touchdown, Ducks.
As good as he is on the football field, this guy's an unbelievable human. And he's the kind of person that you want your boy to grow up to be. Yeah, I think Dylan means everything to this team. He kind of embodies this team.
You kind of go around outside football, but when you're on the field, he'll turn that switch.
Gabriel, deep down the middle. Got it.
I'm not the biggest guy, but he's the heart of the line. He hits shots. Hopefully we keep him upright as much as possible, but he's taking some big hits, and no matter what happens, he gets it.
Gabriel, shoulder to his own touchdown.
I know you can't do it alone. I know that sounds amazing, but what's more fulfilling, what's more important is the people I'm around and the memories I'm creating.
Why wait till Saturday to preview that game? We have Jake Butt right here, so let's preview it with him. I want kind of a big picture thought first. This is another opportunity for Penn State to win the big game, right? That's been the knock on them, honestly, this century, because they only have one win against a top 5 ranked opponent in 24 opportunities since the year 2000. This win would not only give them the Big Ten championship, it put them at the #1 seed in all likelihood in the playoff.
Yeah, and really think about how many of those matchups were Ohio State and Michigan, right? Like and I look at the Ohio State-Michigan game this past weekend, and the result, a big reason the result was the way it was the mental side of it. Penn State falling short consistently against Ohio State and Michigan. There's a mental aspect to that. What I'm interested in is this is a fresh start. Oregon and Penn State, they don't really know each other. James Franklin and Dan Lanning, they don't really know each other. You know, it's like a free throw shooter late in the game. You don't want to be conscious of your shots. You just want to go up and do your routine. You know, for James Franklin as a coach, you don't want to be conscious of the moment. You want to coach the way you have all year. And sometimes in big games, you get away from that. You know, the goal line stand that Ohio State's defense stuffed Penn State. Why is Tyler Warren not getting a touch, right? Like, you see what I'm saying? The mental side. I look at this game from an X's and O's standpoint. It's won and lost in the trenches. It is that simple to me. Oregon's defensive line deserves so much more credit than what they've got this year. It's the most underrated defensive line in college football. Derek Harmon, probably the most underrated interior defensive line in college football. He is a force. But at all three levels, they're great. PFF has these defensive grades. Per PFF, Oregon is one of two teams to have a top 5 defensive line grade and a top 5 linebacker grade. Oh, and they also have a top 5 coverage grade. So the defense is great. On the flip side, how about this one right here with Dillon Gabriel? It will be won on the back of him in the skill position. Here's the key. Oregon's offensive line against Penn State's defensive line. Top 10 quarterback when he's not facing pressure and when he's not blitzed. Still a good quarterback under pressure and when he's blitzed, but you see the difference there. Can Abdul-Carter and Denai Dennis-Sutton and Zane Durant get after Dillon Gabriel? If not, I like the wide receivers and tight ends and skill Oregon against Penn State's secondary, especially with Tez Johnson back and healthy.
It is not a guarantee that all the Heisman votes will wait. They've already been handed out, but there are two guys that could make a big impression. I don't think it's going to Dillon Gabriel or Tyler Warren, but they both have a good shot of making it to New York to be one of the finalists. And this is a great opportunity for both of them individually.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Dillon Gabriel deserves, he deserves more conversation. He's been having a phenomenal year. He's the quarterback of the #1 team in the country, and he's undefeated. He's their everything. And another subtle piece of it is his ability to run, like his legs. That's something that Penn State's going to have to account for. On the flip side, I look to go back to the trench play. You know, Penn State, when they played Ohio State, that's a similar defense, Ohio State and Oregon's defense. Okay, they struggled. Penn State's offensive line struggled. They only had 150 yards passing on the day, only 120 yards rushing on the day. They were 3 for 11 on third downs. A big reason for that is Ohio State's defensive line and pressure package got to Drew Aller and stuffed Singleton. Remember, we were thinking in that game, watching it, why does Tyler Warren not have more touches? This is the game where Tyler Warren, at minimum, needs 10 touches. Probably 10 targets, which will lead to 7 or 8 catches, a few carries, and a few Wildcat passing opportunities. They have got to win this game on the back of Tyler Warren.
And they can.
And they can.
I mean, he's shown us the ability to do all those things. Drew Aller can get him the ball. That's an opportunity. I'm curious, the one matchup I'm looking at is Jordan James against the Penn State running defense. How much is Oregon going to get in terms of rushing yards in this game? And they're not the best rushing offense, but it is a very good rushing defense that Penn State has that's going to be shutting them down.
And again, that's the trenches. It's, you know, Oregon's offensive line, they should be a finalist for the Joe Moore Award, in my opinion. Like, that is an elite unit that has, remember that we questioned them the first 2 games, and then they made some corrections, and they've been freaking dominant since then. One more thing, too, is red zone scoring. Yeah, that's been a big storyline across college football, pro football, football in general. On the season, red zone scoring, Penn State's offense, they're 14th in red zone scoring offensively. Oregon's 48th. And we've seen when they've when they've gotten in trouble, Wisconsin's a good example. Dillon Gabriel throws some interceptions and makes some mistakes down in the red zone. So the difference between field goals and touchdowns and the difference between scoring or interceptions can make all the difference in the world. I think Penn State would want to win by keeping it a lower scoring game. The flip side would be, I think if Oregon could turn this into a shootout, I don't know that Penn State has the firepower to match up with what Oregon has.
I was just going to say, another thing to watch is if there's quick scores. Penn State is not the team necessarily to come from behind. Oregon is the team to score quickly and to get an early lead and hang on to it. Again, that's coming up on Saturday. You have to think of how much Urban Meyer internally hated doing that breakdown.
Yes.
Because, as you well know, as a former Michigan man, it's not fun to talk about when your team that you spent so many years on loses. So you were a part of this rivalry. It is in your blood. What was it like for you watching that game? What was your takeaway?
It was unbelievable, honestly, to watch. And I knew going into it that, Ohio State was favored by 3 touchdowns. And I was like, that's if you just look at the talent on paper. But this one's different. My freshman year in 2013, Ohio State was number 3 in the country. We were like 6-5 or 5. We were an average team. 42-41, it came down to a 2-point conversion. This game's always different. And as I was watching it, I was blown away by the game plan the Buckeyes had offensively. If you just look at this, Michigan without Will Johnson. Ohio State has Jeremiah Smith, Ibuka, Carnell Tate, and more. So Ohio State has probably $250 million of assets in wide receivers. They don't throw him the ball. Jeremiah Smith doesn't get a touchdown doesn't get a target final 25 minutes of the game. Meanwhile, Michigan, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant. That's $250 million of interior defensive linemen. And they ran right at them with the patchwork offensive line. As I start to look at it, it was a flawless game plan by Wink Martindale, because you say, okay, throw the ball, but then I look at the pre-snap structure, and there's a timer that goes off in your head offensively. With that defensive line, Will Howard had about 1.8 to 2.2 seconds from the time the ball is snapped to get rid of it. So what Michigan did was they sat their DBs about 8 to 10 yards. It takes about 1.5 seconds to get to that 10-yard mark. So pre-snap structure, the view Will Howard had is like, dang, I don't like it. And they're playing zone coverage with their eyes in the backfield. And Wink didn't need to bring pressure because the D-line was winning. We talk about running the ball. There's okay, you run the ball, but how do you run the ball? I want to show one clip, and you can do zone scheme, gap scheme, outside zone, inside zone. The one thing you don't want to do is run zone right at those 2 interior D-line defenders because they can anchor. They can get low and fire off the ball. The counter to that is a trap scheme, and I believe we have a clip I can show you here. Watch, this is the trap scheme. Zone running right at them. The D-line can be anchored, and you have to move them vertically. The back view, watch how they create movement. It's lateral movement. This play was successful because it took what made Michigan's defensive game plan so great, it used it against him. All day, those D linemen were anchored and firing off violent vertically. And Ohio State was just banging their heads against the wall trying to push them. You're not going to do that. The trap play right there works because Michigan's D-line fires off the ball and you come hit them lateral, creating vertical seams. I don't mind running the ball, but running stretch zone into the boundary isn't going to work. Running zone right at those guys is not going to work. There was not enough trap. There was not enough speed option. There was not enough quarterback run. That's my big takeaway.
It's funny you focus on the run game because I would argue the play of the game happened with 3 minutes and 16 seconds left around midfield, 3rd and 6, and Cal Mullings runs right into the line of scrimmage, bounces outside, and gets 27 yards, and that set up the game-winning field goal.
And what's that play? Because Judkins and Travion Henderson, that's the best running back duo in college football. I won't argue with it. Those are great backs. What's that play? That's not about stats. That's not about 5-star ratings. That's not something you can measure with analytics. That's Khalil Mullings by the sheer willpower deep in his soul saying, I refuse to be tackled. He was surrounded by red jerseys, and he threw him down and broke the tackle and ran. And to that point, where that happened, Ohio State's defense played great. They couldn't get off the field.
Right.
Michigan has a 3rd and 6 to end the 3rd quarter. Davis Warren hits Marlon Klein, bobbles it, catches it, 1st and 10 all of a sudden. Michigan, in that entire 4th quarter, had 2 possessions. Michigan drives all the way down there. Davis Warren throws an interception. Ohio State goes 3 and out. Michigan gets the ball back, and they convert 3rd downs and 3rd downs and 3rd downs. So Davis Warren, it's not a Heisman stat line, but he made a ton of big plays on 3rd down to extend drives, which minimized the amount of time Ohio State had. It was unbelievable. Those things, when you're a favorite and the underdog is hanging around, the pressure then works against you. The home field advantage works against you. So congrats to Sharon Moore, Davis Warren, and that team. It was a glorious day for them.
Real quick, how does OSU move forward? Because it is true, a successful season is still in front of them.
Yeah.
You make it to the national championship game, you win a national title. That's what people will remember. But how do you dig out of the emotional loss?
Yeah, well, people were shocked when I said I thought Ohio State was the best team or second best team in college football, but I had picked Michigan to win. I still believe they're the best team or second best team from a talent standpoint, but this is an emotional loss. And I go back to my trouble with the snap loss in 2015 against Michigan State,
right.
where we got into the locker room and it was complete and utter shock and disbelief. That's where your leader, your head coach, as a leader, needs to earn his dollars. Jim said, listen, he acknowledged the devastation of the loss, and he said, listen, the only cure to this sickness is someone has to pay. We have to go get a win to wash this taste out of our mouth. He said, we will put steel in our spines, we will work as hard as possible, and someone will pay. Ohio State, this is a devastating loss, but your goals of winning a national title are right there, and you are absolutely capable of doing it. Have to overcome. You can't let one loss turn into two.
And they have an opportunity for a home game that could help them wash out that bad taste in the first round of the playoff. Won't be easy. Nobody in the playoff is going to be an easy win, but they will have an opportunity ahead of them. We'll see if lots going on in the Big Ten today. Tonight, the first round of the NCAA volleyball tournament starts. 5 highly seeded Big Ten teams in action. You got Purdue traveling to Penn State in men's hoops. And on the Big Ten Network, don't miss Big Ten hockey, where the Nittany Lions and the Buckeyes open up a series in Columbus. Puck drops at 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central Time. Also, Friday, Illinois locks up with Indiana in the inaugural Big Ten Takedown Wrestling event. This is cool because it's happening live from the Big Ten Football Championship game Fan Fest in Indianapolis. Coverage starts 5 Eastern, 4 Central, 2 Pacific time, right here on the Big Ten Network. I'm going to stop by the booth in that broadcast as well as we get ready for our tailgate coming your way on Saturday. We mentioned a little bit earlier in the show that Michigan got rid of their offensive coordinator. This is an offense that averaged only 22 points a game, 14th best out of 18 teams in the Big Ten. Most glaring, they were the 2nd worst passing offense in the league, 5th worst passing offense in the country.
Yeah, it's that's unacceptable, for Michigan, especially coming off a national title. But now you look at this has got to be one of the most attractive assistant jobs in college football with Bryce Underwood, and with the commitment now too from the program top down. You come in as a play caller and your success will be tied with the success of the highest rated recruit in the country. You now have 1, 2, 3, 4 years together. But you can't just fit matters, okay? Rich Rod at Michigan. When he comes, Rich Rod, good coach.
Great coach.
Successful coach.
Absolutely.
Fit didn't work. Okay, part of why Michigan won the national title, why Michigan upset Ohio State. They were very clear on who they are as a program. So for Sharon Moore, you don't just want to sort best OC to worst. You have to account and factor in fit to this equation. But I believe now, I'm really excited for Sharon because of how late everything happened last year. Jim goes to the Chargers really late. The support cycle had came and went. The transfer portal had came and went. It felt like this year just moved really fast. They've had a chance to breathe, collect themselves, win over your rival, finish the season strong, get the #1 recruit. This hire is so important for Sharon Moore and has a chance to set up Michigan for the next decade.
Right, because of the opportunity with Bryce Underwood, the #1 player in the country as your freshman quarterback next year.
It's exciting.
You get this hire right, that offense could be really fun to watch in the immediate future. For Jake Butt, I'm Mike Hall. Thanks for watching Big Ten Today.